Welcome to the September Ordinary Council meeting. I'll declare this meeting open. We're running a little bit late at 6:05. And I'll just confirm that the recording is on. Yes. Okay, this meeting is being live streamed. I wish to acknowledge the past and present traditional owners of the land on which we gather to conduct this meeting and pay our respects to the elders of the Whadjuk Noongar people, both past and present. I only have one announcement tonight. The upcoming local government elections will take place on the 21st of October. Postal voting packs should be arriving in your letterboxes this week. There are 3 positions on council to be contested by 7 candidates. Profiles of all candidates are included on the town's website, and they're also included in the ballot papers that will be arriving in your letterbox. So please have your say. Thank you. Apologies, attendances and applications for leave of absence. We have one apology tonight from Councillor McLennan. We also have another councillor, Councillor Polifka, who will be joining us online. And I don't believe we have any other apologies. No. Okay, leaves of absence. Councillor Wilding.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to apply for a leave of absence from the 13th of November through the 13th of December.
Very good. I would also like to apply for a few days leave of absence. Sorry, bear with me while I get the dates. From the 29th of this month to the 2nd of October. Any other leave of absence? Okay, can I have a mover? Councillor Ames, seconded. Councillor Carter. Anyone against? I'll declare that carried. And I'm assuming, Councillor Polifka, if I don't hear from you, you also are agreeing with any motions.
Yes, if I'm in disagreement, I'll use the
Great.
hand raising function. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillors, do we have any declarations of interest? Councillor Ames.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. It's in relation to item 12.9, the arts, events and culture meeting. If we scroll down to the committee recommendation.
So, Councillor Ames, what I intend to do with that particular item is to pull that one section out, in which case you obviously have an interest. The other councillors will vote on that, and then you can come back and vote on the remainder of the item.
No worries, that's just in relation to point 6, the public art distribution.
Yes.
Thank you.
What is the nature? Can I ask what the nature of the declaration?
Yeah, sure, Mr. Woods. It's just in relation to some of the changes that the public art may be redistributed around the town into the Park Estate Reserve, which I live across the road from.
So proximity?
Yes, correct.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Ames. We now move on to presentations or deputations. I don't believe we have any tonight. We also now move on to item 6, which is statements by members of the public. Statements are limited to 2 minutes. If you wish to make a statement, raise your hand, come to the microphone saying your name and address. Also, the clock up there will give you the timeline. So if you can watch the clock to know what time when you're running out. So thank you, sir. Your name and address.
Adam Covell, 16 Lucan Way, Bassendean. A short statement. With your indulgence, that's I think everyone knows anyway. I'm the current chair of the Bassendean Men's Shed. I'd like to thank our CEO, Cameron Woods, and Director Community Planning, Luke Gibson, for visiting our shed today, seeing the layout, equipment, and what we do, and meeting some of the guys. We appreciated the meaningful discussions on shed running issues and the shed hire in particular. We think think that an understanding was reached on a way forward with the town improving the hiring process and doing some promotion, and we will feed into the process handling of the ad hoc arrangements and link them into a workable arrangement for everyone. It was great to have a frank and fruitful meeting with all parties, left with a common goal and an objective of a much closer association. Just in finishing, we are a welcoming shed and we treat everyone that comes to us with any matter respectfully. We would like to issue an invitation to anyone to come along to the shed, have a look around, have a cup of tea, or have a chat. Maybe there's something we can do for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Covell. Would anyone else like to make a statement? Ma'am, if you'd like to come to the microphone. Your name and address, thank you, dear.
Good evening all. My name is Sue Conway and I live at 119 Guildford Road in Bassendean. I just wanted to say, the bins, the skips that we put our rubbish into, not nice. I mean, we have such a limited time.
So, ma'am, it's very hard to
Oh,
so,
is
yeah.
that better?
Yes.
Oh, we have such a limited, thank you. Yeah, we have such a limited time to put all our rubbish into the skip, and there isn't always room for the skip in everyone's place. So, and if you put it down at the end of the laneway, which some people have to enter into their homes, you don't know who's putting what rubbish in there. And I believe that we have to pay if the wrong stuff is put into the skip. So if someone else puts their rubbish in there, how do we know? So I would like to ask for the curbside collection to be reinstated. It works better.
So, if you don't mind, I'll actually advise you that our waste services are reviewed every year. My understanding is that this council will have a workshop at the end of this year to look at our waste services. I can't promise you what will come out of that, but I do know that councillors are aware of some of the commentary around the skip bins, and I'm sure that our waste staff will endeavour to see what we can do. The other comment I will make is that the advertised bulk verge collection, there were problems associated with that in that we attracted a significant increase in illegal dumping around the town. So that was a problem. Having said that, I am aware that the staff have been investigating alternatives, and I would hope that perhaps when we have some additional information that we will be able to come back with some answers.
Oh, good. Okay.
So just to be aware, we are obviously reviewing the situation.
Okay, that's good.
We do actually review our waste services every year.
No, good. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, and just one more thing. I just wanted to ask about the bus. Is it definitely coming back in
I believe
October?
that the system has already started, but I'll just refer to our CEO if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I might refer to Director of Planning, Mr. Gibson, because we were seeing how many volunteer drivers we could have volunteer for the service.
Through Madam Mayor, that's correct. Obviously, Council made a decision requesting it be brought back as a de-scope service. We're in the process now of seeking interest of volunteers. So the service is not actually functioning again yet, but we are in the throes of trying to recruit volunteers.
Will the same drivers, be reinstated? I mean, which were driving the buses before? Because they know the people and they know they've experienced and everything. So wouldn't that be a, easier way to go to get the service up and running instead of having people apply and all that?
Through Madam Mayor, yes, potentially some of the drivers will continue if they are registering their interest with the town. They're able to satisfy the requirements of the town in terms of the various things we need from them. But the offer is certainly open to them to register their interest, and I'd suggest some of them probably will.
Okay.
Thank you, my dear.
Okay, thank you.
Have a nice, okay. Yes, sir, if you'd like to come to the microphone.
Bill Busby, 53 Hague Street, Ashfield. Today's paper had been mentioned twice. One was in the death column, so it wasn't me, obviously. No relation. And the other one was page 10, which was to do with plumbing, which is fine, and apprenticeships. So recently, the CEO of the town have advertised for...
Just a point of order, Mr Busby, before you proceed, Madam Mayor, just for everybody in attendance and live streaming, that Mr Busby is a current candidate of the upcoming election. So happy for you to talk, Mr Busby, but always need to nominate the fact that you are an up-and-coming candidate.
Okay.
Thank you.
So recently, the town have advertised a tender for review for services. So where are we at financially now, 2 years ago and 4 years ago? Are we rapidly improving or are we slipping? Because what's the ratio of staff wages?
So,
to
Mr
ratepayer
Busby, we're in statement time at the moment. I'm assuming that you wish to ask questions. I'll just confirm that no one else in the audience wishes to make a statement before we move on to question time.
Oh, sorry, I jumped the queue.
Okay, so that's okay. So we'll move on to questions. Sorry, if you could repeat that question. Apologies.
That's all right. So recently there was a tender put out in the West Australian for review of the operations basically in the town of Bassendean, and that's raised some questions around town where people have asked me, where are we going financially? And I obviously don't have a clue. I've looked at the financials. So where are we now going forward, 2 years ago and 4 years ago? So is there a...
So, Mr Busby, on the town's website, publicly available are the annual reports for the town. They're published every year. They're available every year. Those documents can be perused. Also, in our monthly reports, there's a monthly financial update on the town and what we're doing. But what I will do is ask if Mr White would like to respond to that question.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you. It's not really a question that can be responded to in a matter of a few sentences or a couple of paragraphs.
Just generally want to know, because people are asking, apart from the rubbish and the rates and the bits and pieces, when I'm going around dropping pamphlets in, the stuff being flooded at me. But generally, that's a question that's coming up.
It's a long road aboard just because the town's gone out to market for a consultant to assist us to conduct an organisational review. I would have thought that would be a prudent thing for any organisation to do fairly regularly. So whether there's any causational link between that and the town's financial position, I'd suggest there's not. In terms of the town's overall financial position, it has strengthened over the last few years, and I think if you go onto the My Council website, you'll see some evidence of that. That's where you can sort of look at the ratios and different comparisons with different local governments. It has strengthened, but having said that, the town of Bassendean is a very small local government with some challenges in terms of quite an extensive river frontage, limited sources of revenue, and fairly moderate growth in terms of rates revenue over the last few years. So there's no doubt that the town needs to be scrupulous in its expenditure of funds, and it should be. It's spending ratepayers' money, so it's incumbent upon us as an administration to give council the information that they need to make those decisions.
We basically accept all that and we can go and review those, but I'm just asking for a general statement to say 4 years ago the ratio was this, 2 years ago the ratio was that, the ratio now is getting better or getting worse. So even if you get back to us with that, because that's a question that's coming up.
So, Mr Busby, as I've indicated, there are publicly available documents on the town's website that can provide you with comparisons. I think the officer has answered the question. Do you have another question, sir?
So I'm asking a question to see if you can send us that information out in just a summary, so that I can to people who are older than me who are asking questions, because it's a bit like the verge collection versus the bin collection, people dumping rubbish. If they ask me to ask a question, I'm prepared to do that, whether I'm elected or not elected.
Yes.
Through you, Madam Mayor. Bill, could I just ask, there's a number of ratios of local government. There's, I think, 5 that we're measured against, and the formula is, to a layperson, quite complicated.
Yes.
What is the question you're getting asked so we can really...
Generally, the question is along the lines of if 50 or 80% of our ratepayers' money goes to salaries and wages.
Okay, that's much simpler. So we'll provide you with the last 4 years of salaries and wages as a percentage of rates.
And if it's possible, I know you can't see into the future, is the future Bassendean Bayswater, Bassendean Swan, because there's obviously...
Well, what I can say is the purpose of the organisational review is to find out how we can do things better.
Well done.
So the first thing is we need one for the integrated reporting. So a workforce plan is a requirement under the integrated reporting framework. So statutory, we've got to provide one. So we're out doing that now. The reason we're going out to do it with an independent is so we've got an objective view of somebody that does this for other local governments, who can tell us how we rate against other local governments and find out if there is any savings where we can find it for the ratepayer.
I've made some unofficial inquiries from Bassendean and Swan just for comparisons, but I need something in black and white to sort of accurate.
Yeah, I would caution you against comparing us a tier 3.
Oh, just in a general sense?
Yeah, I think
Not
you should do your comparisons against other local governments that are tier 3 within the metro area, because comparing us to Swan, I'll tell you now, Swan's about 48%,
Yep.
and we're about 86, 87%.
I think Bassendean's about 45%.
No, I just
Oh,
said,
sorry, not Bassendean, Bayswater.
yeah. So those tier 1 local governments have significant income.
Yes. Thank you.
Are there further questions? Okay. Item 8 is petitions. I don't believe we have any petitions coming forward. 9.1 is confirmation of the minutes, that the minutes of the Ordinary Council meeting held on the 22nd of August 2023 be received and confirmed as a true and correct record. Can I have a mover, Councillor McWilliam, a seconder, Councillor Ames, anyone against? I'll declare that carried. We have no business deferred from the previous meeting. We have no external committee reports or updates. This then brings us to the officer reports. Now, councillors, coming out of en bloc, I have 12.2, 12.3, 12.9 and 12.12. Councillors, are there any other items that you would like to pull out of en bloc? Okay, so can I have a move for the remaining items in en bloc, which is 12.5, 12.6, 12.7 and 12.10. Councillor Wilding, seconded. Councillor Ames, anyone against? I'll declare that carried. And okay, so councillors, we will move to the reports. Now, councillors, it's my intention for 12.2 to take that to the end towards confidential business, because the attachment to that is confidential. So this will now bring us to 12.3, which is use of community facilities, 1A May Holman Drive, Bassendean. Now I'd just ask if an officer would like to speak to this, although my understanding is it was covered fairly well last week. But
Through you, Madam Mayor, just briefly to sort of echo the comments from Mr. Covell in the gallery. The CEO and I had a very productive and positive meeting with the group this morning, and we think we're on the same page in terms of being able to move forward with the town looking to promote the facility more broadly in an effort to maximise its future use.
thank you. Councillors, are there any questions on this item? Now, I'm aware that apart from the officer's recommendation, that Councillor Wilding has suggested some smallish amendments. Before we move forward, I'd ask Councillor Wilding if you would actually read out those amendments which are in addition to the officer recommendation.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The amendments turn the existing officer recommendation into a point 1. They add a point 2, which is request the CEO to incorporate the inclusion of these parameters into a future review of the community leasing framework to ensure their application in future leases where relevant. And point 3, request the administration regularly promotes the premises as a place available for hire.
Thank you. Now, before we move on, I just ask the administration if there is any reservation about those particular amendments. No? Okay. So, Councillor Wilding, would you like to move the officer recommendation with those amendments? Do we have a seconder? Councillor McWilliam, do we have... And before I move on, Councillor Plifka, I just want to make sure that you have no questions on this one.
Yes, I've had a chance to review those amendments. They seem eminently sensible. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. So we have a mover and a seconder. Do we have anyone against? I'll declare that carried. Thank you, Councillor Wilding. .4 is the draft amended local planning policy 1. Thank you, gentlemen. Again, I'd ask the officer if you'd like to speak to this one, Mr. Gibson.
Through you, Madam Mayor, no, nothing to add to last week.
Councillors, questions? If you don't mind, Mr. Gibson, I have a question. Following on from some previous questions I've asked, in respect to the draft planning policy 1, and noting that there is a structure plan to come in future years, do you envisage developing a strategy to go in association with this policy in the near future, or you're planning to wait until the structure plan is developed?
Through Madam Mayor, neither.
Okay.
This is the framework that staff suggests should bridge the gap between where we are now and where we will be when we have the precinct structure plan. So we would envisage this being in place the next 2 or so years. When we are at a point of having a fully adopted precinct structure plan, we could have council revoke this on the basis it would be redundant.
Okay. I have Councillor Plifka who'd like to ask a question. Councillor Plifka?
Yes, thank you. This strategy, is this the place where we were discussing the variations to the deemed to comply provisions on the last occasion, Director Gibson?
Mr. Gibson's shaking his head, but I'll let him answer.
Through you, Madam Mayor, no, that was the item regarding local planning policy 12.
Okay, excellent. No questions there.
Councillors, any further questions? So we have an officer recommendation. Do we have a mover for the officer recommendation? Councillor Ames, seconder. Councillor McWilliam. Anyone against? I'll declare that carried. Okay. Okay, we go to 12.8, which is the Bassendean Local Emergency Management Committee meeting that was held on the 30th of August. Again, I would ask Mr Gibson, if you'd like to speak to this item at all? No, it's very straightforward. Councillors, any questions on this item? Okay, do I have a mover? Councillor Ames, a seconder. Councillor Wilding, anyone against? I'll declare that carried. Councillors, the next one is 12.9, Arts, Culture and Events Committee meeting on the 5th of September. And we have, again, Mr Gibson, if you'd like to speak to this item.
Through Madam Mayor, no, nothing to add to last week, but happy to take questions.
Okay, so given the Councillor Ames' proximity interest, if I want to ask a question in respect to the art location that doesn't relate to the item, can he stay for that?
I think it's safer just to leave that way. It's,
Yep. Okay.
transparent.
Okay. Yes, thank you. So, thank you, Councillor Ames. I have a question, Mr Gibson, which I apologise, I should have probably brought it up during the week. It's been a busy week, but in respect to the Collier Road location, and I do understand the feedback that's been provided that artwork has to be, it is the art dollars are gathered through developer contributions, and the art is theoretically to be located within a certain proximity of those developments. Could I ask if there was a desire to see that art located somewhat outside that circle but in reasonable proximity, would there be any possibility to write to those two developments to see if they would agree to that artwork being in a slightly different location?
Through Madam Mayor, this issue's been raised a number of times. The funds are collected for the provision of art in the vicinity of the application. That's why it's collected. If council doesn't want to spend it in that location, I would suggest council should actually return it. If it wants to provide art in other locations, that is also okay, but council needs to make provision for that in the budget.
Okay. Okay, so councillors, we have in .6, this is the one that I was going to pull out separately. I'll just read out the officer recommendation. In relation to public art, endorses the proposed locations for public art as per the map provided to the committee, but amended such as location A is relocated to Palmerston Square Reserve and location B is relocated to Park Estate Reserve as per the attached amended map. So unless councillors have any further questions, are there further questions? Okay. Do we have a mover for that one? Councillor Wilding, seconded. Councillor McWilliam. Anyone against? I'll declare that carried. If we could invite Councillor Ames to come back in. So councillors, item 6 has been passed. We have the remaining items, which are the committee recommendation to council. I would ask, are there further questions on these recommendations to council? Okay, so we have a committee recommendation. I'm not going to read it out because it's quite a long list of recommendations. It's also publicly available in the agenda. So councillors, do I have a mover for this item? Councillor Ames, seconded. Councillor McWilliam. Is there anyone against? I'll declare that carried. So the next one we move to is 12.11, which is the Audit and Governance Committee meeting on the 6th of September. And Mr. White, would you like to speak to this one? Can I just check that procedurally, moving item 6 in that previous one and then moving the other was procedurally correct? Yes.
Through Madam Mayor, in the context of Councillor Ames having
Yep.
an interest, I think that was appropriate.
Yes, thank you. Okay, so sorry about that. Mr. White.
Nothing further to add to last week, Madam Mayor, thank you.
Okay. So, Councillor.
Just a quick question.
Yes.
I wasn't able to attend that meeting I wasn't able to attend that meeting as I normally chair that meeting, and I just wondered if my apology was recorded.
Thank you. So, councillors, further questions on this item? Okay, do I have a mover for the officer recommendation? Councillor Wilding, seconder. Councillor Ames. Anyone against? I'll declare that carried. Okay. So 13.1 will have to go to announcements. Okay, so councillors, we have notices of motion. 13.1 is a notice of motion that's been put. I'm going to do confidential.
It's not confidential. I
Yep.
think.
Okay.
Just needs an absolute majority for.
12.2.
12.12, sorry.
12.12. We've just done that, haven't we?
No, we did the audit and governance.
Oh, we did too. Sorry. Apologies. Apologies. I do have that in a different colour. Okay. So 12.12. Mr. White, again.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you, just very briefly, because this has come straight to the council meeting rather than via the briefing session. It's the standard monthly report. I'd just like to draw council's attention to two proposed budget amendments, which are shown in the report and in the recommendation. I believe there was some information circulated in the bulletin in relation to the first one being the footpath, and the second one is to correct an error that should have provisioned for it as a carry forward.
Councillors, questions? Do we have a mover for the officer recommendation? Councillor Ames, seconder. Councillor Wilding. Do we have anyone against? Declare that carried. Apologies for losing my place before, guys. Okay, we now move on to motions of which previous notice has been given. So 13.1 was provided by Councillor McLennan, who is not in attendance tonight. Having discussed it with the CEO, I propose that we move that to item 14, announcements of notices of motion for the next meeting. The next meeting will be prior to the council elections, so Councillor McLennan will be available for that. Okay, so the other notice of motion was provided by myself for the Bassendean Caledonian Soccer Football Club lease and other community leases. So, councillors, you're aware of the notice of motion. For those listening in on the audience, I will read it out, that Council 1 agrees to enter into a lease agreement with the Bassendean Caledonian Soccer Football Club for the lease of club rooms at Jubilee Reserve, being the attached draft lease agreement subject to modifications so as to provide a fixed term lease of 2 years. Authorises the Chief Executive Officer to apply the current adopted Caledonian club room lease rental for the 2-year term of the lease backdated to the August 2nd. and requests that all other community leases that have expired or may expire prior to the review and adoption of a new community leasing framework are to continue to operate under the holding over clause. And that's my notice of motion, not yours, so apologies for that. So, councillors, first of all, I would ask the administration or the CEO if there's any perceived issues with this. I can see nothing in the officer comment.
No, thank you, Madam Mayor. The administration has reviewed this, and we actually think it's a very sensible notice of motion, and it will require the administration to bring forward that community leasing framework more quickly. I think the current lease environment doesn't really allow for a redevelopment clause in the current leases, and with Jubilee Reserve being earmarked for significant state government and local government funds, I think it's an opportunity to review the leasing framework, review the lease, and make sure that all of our leases are contemporary across the town.
Thank you, Mr. Woods. Councillor Ames.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you, maybe directed to Mr. Woods. Do we have an understanding in regards to when our community leasing framework will be sort of brought to a workshop or council for obviously the contemporary leases to be actioned?
Yeah, look, we've done a little bit of work on it in-house, but we're thinking it will be early in the new year. So at this stage, February.
Thank you. Councillors, further questions? So I'd like to move the motion. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Wilding. Do I have anyone against? I'll declare that carried. So this brings us to announcements of notice of motion for the next meeting. So one, they're both provided by Councillor McLennan. 14.1, that Council requests the CEO to, 1, investigate options to incentivise property owners who have a mature tree of significance on their private property being listed on the Town of Bassendean's Significant Tree Register under LPS 11, and 2, provide a report to Council identifying possible incentives that Council may consider adopting to support and encourage trees being included on the town's significant tree register. And the other one that was on the agenda as 13.1, in an effort to, where practical, support retention of mature trees to complement the delivery of quality development outcomes in the Bassendean Town Centre, Council requests the CEO to, 1, develop and release a request for quote RFQ to conduct an audit of mature trees on private property within the boundaries of the Bassendean Town Centre for trees that meet the requirements of being classified as significant trees on the town's significant tree register, and 2, present the cost and the process for the conducting of the audit with an officer's recommendation to the 2024-25 budget workshop for Council's consideration. So those are announced for the next OCM in October. So item 15, there is no urgent business that I know of, which brings us to confidential business and 2 items that will be discussed behind closed doors. So thank the audience for coming tonight, and thank you for your contributions. I would ask for a mover to go behind closed doors. Councillor Wilding. Seconder, Councillor Ames. Anyone against? I'll declare that carried. We'll now go behind closed doors, ladies and gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, can I have a mover to come out from behind closed doors? Councillor Carter, seconded Councillor Wilding. Anyone against? I declare that carried. So we've come out from behind closed doors at 7:20, and item 12.2 has been dealt with under confidential business. The officer's recommendation has been approved with amendments. Those amendments, which are multiple, will be published in the minutes of the meeting. We also have dealt with confidential item 8.1, which is the CEO probationary period, probationary review period. I will read out the approved resolution of council. That Council 1 notes the CEO KPI progress report dated the 8th of August 2023 as provided in attachment 1 to this report. 2, confirms successful completion of the probationary period as outlined in clause 2.2 of the CEO contract, and further confirms the continued employment of Cameron Woods as CEO to the town of Bassendean. And 3, requests the Mayor to provide written notification to the CEO within 7 days of this council decision confirming successful completion of the probationary period. And that item was carried unanimously. On that note, I will declare the meeting closed at 7:23 p.m. and the next ordinary council meeting will be held on Tuesday, the 17th of October 2023. A special council meeting will be held on Tuesday, the 24th